Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2021? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church bylaws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2021. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.
Good evening. Welcome to the third episode of Mantle Mondays. And we're so excited to be here tonight. And I'm going to ask you, as a cost of admission, to please like, share, comment, let someone know Mantle Mondays is on tonight. This program is designed to learn more about pastors, authors, entrepreneurs, conference hosts, leaders, their pathway to leadership, their wins, their losses, their tips for success, just to learn more about the mind of some of the greatest minds and greatest voices that we have today. And so tonight, I'm so honored to have one of the leading voices in the kingdom, not just in Richmond, not just on the East Coast, but globally, Pastor J. Patrick. Pastor J. Patrick is the founding pastor of Liberation Church in Richmond. He is the executive director Liberation Veteran Services here in Richmond, and he's the host of the Church Builder Summit. He's the author of 3 books, Why He Won't Marry You for singles, 21 Things Pastors Want to Say to Their Congregations, and the Millennial Manual. And I'm honored that he is a colleague and a brother here in this city of Richmond. And let us welcome Pastor J. Patrick as he comes tonight. Welcome, Pastor Jay. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing amazing. Blessings. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm so honored that you're on the show with us. I know you're busy. You wear so many different hats: a pastor, an entrepreneur, conference host, a CEO of a nonprofit organization, and it's 4 days to Christmas, and you have a son. That's probably
absolutely a son and a wife.
Wants everything into everything and trying to balance it all. But you're one of the leading voices, greatest minds that the kingdom has to offer right now. And I'm so honored that you took time out of your schedule to be with us today. So a lot of people don't know your story. People see J. Patrick today, the conference host, the author, the pastor. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us, how did you get started? Like, where did you come from?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. You are a friend and a brother. My family loves your family. We greatly respect and admire you all, and just who you are in the kingdom, what you represent, and how you all just carry the mantle of the Holy Spirit in this region. And I just, for all those that are watching and listening and will watch, Bishop Travell Travis is the real deal. He's paper Bible saved. He's got the real authentic Holy Ghost. Yeah, he got he got the authentic Holy Ghost, and him and his wife, they are for real. So I just want to say that before we get started, man. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm with you because of how I feel about you. So I'm glad to be with you tonight. My story is pretty simple, man. I'm a country boy. I come from Pittsylvania County, small rural county, town called Hurt, Virginia. Actually, the street that I grew up on and the little sub town that I grew up in is called Grit, which is the home of Ricky Van Shelton, a famous country and western singer. So I grew up there, and we have a very interesting background to our family. My grandmother had 16 children.
Wow.
And they were some of the first blacks to have their own land in that county. And so the way our area was set up was roughly probably about 10 of my aunts and uncles lived all in the same cluster on that land.
That's right.
And my great aunt, Annie Whitler, who founded the church that I grew up in, her husband built the church that we all went to with his bare hands. And so the way it would work is that we'd all lived within walking distance of each other. On Sundays, we all descend down to church. And then on Sunday afternoon, we all go up to my grandmother's house, and we have a big Sunday dinner.
Wow.
So those are kind of my roots. Grew up in a church that never exceeded probably 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
It was a authentic apostolic church. I mean, the real apostolic church. Glorious Church of the Apostolic Faith Incorporated, headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay. So those were my roots, and I grew up there. And ended up going to college to play basketball, and did well with that, and ended up at Hampden-Sydney College.
Okay.
And was an economics, econ, and management major, which then kind of led me down a path. I was going into banking, investment banking, and landed my first job in Richmond, Virginia. Okay. I was attracted to Richmond because my sister lived here at the time. She still lives here. And I had did an internship with her and lived and stayed with her one summer. And Richmond just felt right. It just felt right. And the rest is kind of history. I've been here ever since. Came here in 2003 to pursue a career in banking. And that's kind of evolved into what we are doing today. So that's kind of how I got here.
Okay. So through college and work, you end up in Richmond. Were you preaching when you came to Richmond? When did you accept the call to preach?
So I received the call to preach very clearly when I was roughly 19. I didn't accept the call to preach till I was roughly 26. Okay. And so I'm well out of college. I am, visiting different churches here in Richmond. But I stumbled across a very small church that the pastor just saw something in me and decided that or felt that there was a call on my life. And I had been feeling that call, and it was finally, I had gotten to a point where I was just ready to surrender. So that was kind of how I received the call to preach. Still had no interest in pastoring. It was nowhere in my purview. As far as I had went was we started a small little Bible study with a plan to just do outreach ministry, do some financial literacy, Bible studies. I just wanted to impact the community. I just wanted to be a help to the community. I knew that the gospel was a vehicle to do that. I just didn't see all the dots being connected to actually formalize a church.
Okay.
So we had that little small Bible study, and and I don't know how much of the story you want. I could give you the whole long, very extremely boring version, and I can slice it up a little bit.
Well, let me ask you this. So when you talk about, let me rewind a little bit. When you talk about that 19 to 26, would you call that running from the call, ignoring the call, or just putting the call on the back burner?
At the time, I thought it was running from the call. Today, I see it as reverencing the call.
Gotcha.
A lot of people, well, let me just say it this way. I get really nervous around people who actually want to pastor.
Absolutely.
I get nervous around people who want to be preachers, want to be prophets. Like, I can't relate to that. All I saw was the burden of it. I didn't see the microphone, the parking space, you get the first plate at homecoming and anniversary.
Right.
I wasn't thinking about none of that. All I saw was this was an opportunity for me to actually fail at something, because everything else I had ever pretty much done, I had been somewhat successful at.
Right.
And so this was the first time I'm looking at a venture, for lack of better expression, that I saw the possibility for me to fail at it, because I knew me. I knew my tendencies. I knew the things that I still were tied up in at the time. You understand? I knew that I was not sold out for it.
Okay.
I love God,
right.
but my lifestyle was not that of someone who had fully submitted yet. So because of that, I knew that I kind of suppressed it as much as I could and for as long as I could, because I didn't want to disappoint God. I didn't want to play with this thing. I didn't want to be nobody's preacher and live in some kind of way and living half of what I'm preaching about. I didn't want to do that. I wasn't interested in that. And while I will say this to somebody's listening, while there's no perfect time ever to surrender, you don't ever arrive at that place where you have no doubts, no insecurities, your life is blameless, you're perfect. That never happens.
Right, absolutely.
But I did at least know that I was not totally yielded, is the word I want to use.
Gotcha.
I wasn't totally yielded, and so I suppressed it as long as I could.
So if it wasn't for the pastor here in Richmond that saw that in you, kind of spoke to that in you, gave you that confidence, that platform, do you think you would have continued to run, or do you kind of credit that moment and that individual to say, okay, now's the time?
I would. I would accredit it to him. I don't totally subscribe to the fact that it would have never happened without him, only because I know God can move in various ways, and
Absolutely.
God can get our attention in various methods and various ways. But I will say that it did absolutely take that season to sober me up and to affirm me to a certain point where I got clear on what I needed to do. And it did. It took somebody to kind of affirm and confirm what was already kind of wrestling inside of me. I just needed somebody to speak to it.
And I want to stay here for a minute, because I've dealt with people who are in similar positions. They don't want to be the hypocrite that everyone is talking about. They don't want the pomp and circumstance. They don't want the spotlight. And like you, some of the truly called are the ones who legitimately fear, reverence, awe the calling. What would you say to that person? I know you already spoke to the how I do you're never perfect or whatever, or it's never the perfect time. But what would you say to that person that's truly, legitimately called by God? They see it, Others see it. We know it. They know it.
You good?
I'm back. You back? Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that Jonah?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would say to that Jonah?
Yes, I would say that first and foremost, I would say what I've already said again. I would say that you don't necessarily need to wait for a perfect time,
Okay.
because the timing is never perfect. What you can perfect is your willingness.
Okay.
And so I don't think God ever is waiting on a perfect vessel,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, again, the gifts and callings come without repentance. So for God to call you, he had to take into consideration and factor in your issues. All I believe God ever wants from us is a willingness.
Okay.
And so I think people have to get out of the mindset of perfection and,
Mm-hmm.
well, I gotta be this, I gotta be that, I gotta look a certain way, I gotta act a certain way, I gotta talk a certain way. No, what you have to be is willing. You have to give God a full yes. That in that yes is a disclaimer. The disclaimer in my yes is, God, I'm coming. I'm flawed, but I'm coming.
Right.
You understand? I'm messed up, but I'm coming. I got some stuff with me now. I got a temper. I got an anger issue. I got some stuff in my flesh, but I'm coming.
I love
And
it.
so as long as I'm coming, God, I need you to help me every step of the way. Walk with me every step of the way. I'm going to fall. I'm going to trip up. I'm going to mess up. But God, be there with me, walk with me, and assist me along the way. And that's what I would share that person. God is not waiting for your perfection. He's just waiting for your willingness.
I love that. I love that. Somebody needs to post that up there. Not your perfection, but your willingness. So
Mm-hmm.
then you find, okay, I put my toe in the pool. I'm start preaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little Bible study. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
my financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And now God says, I need you to go a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
What was that step to say, I'm now called to pastor?
Yeah.
Was it a similar process, or was it even more intense?
It was a very similar process. Very similar. I did wrestle with that as well. I struggled with it. I saw it as an opportunity again to have more responsibility. That's the way I felt. I felt like it was just it felt like a weight around me. It felt like, and truth be told, that weight is still there. It never lifted. I mean, you never really arrive to a place where you don't feel like you have this bullseye on your back as a pastor.
Absolutely.
And I came to it kicking and screaming. I didn't want that on my. I wanted to be able to be. I wanted to love God. I wanted to service people, but I did not want their blood on my hands.
My God.
I didn't want their blood on my hands. I didn't want the responsibility of individuals' eternity left at my facilitation and my management. I didn't want that. And so, yeah, I struggle with it, but I will tell you that, I was literally, I can relate to that portion of scripture where I believe it's Caleb wrestles with the angel. Is either Caleb or Joshua. I believe it's Caleb wrestles with the angel, and he says to him, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. And the angel keeps wrestling with him. his hip out of socket.
There you go.
Jacob.
Yeah.
Knocks his hip out of socket. And and that whole wrestling process of God isolating you, getting you to a place where you are just you and him, and then you having something you need to get from him, and he has something he needs to get from you.
Okay.
And neither of you are willing to leave that mountain the same. So immediately through the wrestling process, Jacob asked the angel, well, who are you? What's your name? And then he, in return, says, okay, well, what's your name? They said, well, your name will no longer be Jacob, but it's going to be Israel.
There you go.
Right. And so I literally feel like I went through that experience. I feel like I literally went through that wrestling with God, that kind of tug of war with God. And when God was finished with me, I had to ask him again, all over again, who are you? And he had to ask me, and he told me who I was, and I've been walking with him ever since.
First Lady asked the question, do you feel that, are you still kicking and screaming at this point, or do you feel like you've somewhat adjusted to wearing the mantle or grown into the mantle?
Yeah. So it's no longer kicking and screaming. What it feels like now is being nailed to an assignment, being nailed to the cross. It almost feels like not to be likened to Jesus, but being likened to an experience that you no longer have the option to abandon.
Gotcha.
You see, it's one thing to be dragged into something kicking and screaming. It's one thing to finally arrive and then you cannot leave. It's not an option. So everything that I feel today, I have to build space in those layers of emotions, because quitting is not an option.
Right. Okay.
So I have to give myself some space to be human. I have to give myself some space to express anger, to express frustration, to express being let down by people, to express feeling unsupported and feeling like you got to do everything yourself, and feeling, all these emotions that come with pastoring, and feeling like you want to help people through their salvation that aren't ready yet, and all these things. And you have to learn how to give yourself space and room to feel all of the emotions you need to feel without giving yourself an option to surrender.
So let me ask you that. That's a great question now, with so many pastors walking away, marriage is falling apart, drug addiction, suicide, you're on sabbatical now. What is your outlet? When you say I need space to, get this off my chest or express myself in a positive, constructive, beneficial way, what is your means of doing that?
Sure. Well, I'll give you several levels to it. The top level for me is my inner circle.
Okay.
A lot of pastors do not have an inner circle that's built of people they can trust and be vulnerable with. Most pastors have built their inner circles with colleagues that they're trying to build stuff with also. So it's a difference between having people around you where all of you have an agenda. Right? You got an agenda for me, I got an agenda for you. We all trying to, somehow parlay our relationship into some leverage to push us forward. I don't deal with relationships like that. Okay. The way I see relationships is, if I actually need you for something and you need me for something, then we're not really friends. What pastors need is friends. Right. We're not talking about, how many you running this week, Doc? How many you got? How many registrations you got, Doc? How many book sales you got? This. We're talking about our families. We're talking about life. We're talking about this. We're talking about that. We are really pouring into each other. And so I say the the number one outlet every pastor should have is 2 or 3 people that they can totally be vulnerable with. Totally, to your wife's famous catchphrase, to be totally naked with, right? To be totally naked with.
That's right.
That you can bare your soul when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you're empty, when you made a bad decision.
Right.
Because you're going to have Sundays. I was sharing today how there's a vast difference between being wrong and being wicked.
Absolutely.
A lot of pastors don't have the luxury of being wrong because they're not surrounded by people who can handle them being wrong without deeming them wicked. And so what I would suggest every pastor is have people around you that allow you to get it wrong without deeming you to be wicked. You're going to get it wrong sometimes. You're going to make I got some things wrong today.
Right.
And I told my wife, I said, look, I got to be better in this area. I got to be better. I got to get a handle on this because, I got to be better in this area. And you got to have people that you can pour into. So the number one outlet is you need a couple people. You don't need a whole bunch.
That's
you
right.
don't need 10. You don't need 20. You just need a couple people that you can be vulnerable with. That's the number one thing. The number two thing I would say is my outlet is my family. Okay. So now why did I distinguish the two? Because some people have their 1 or 2 people, and one of them is your wife.
Guilty.
Well, that don't count. You understand? Your wife doesn't count in that demographic because here's the thing, and here's another very important fact. You cannot include or bring your wife into all of your pastoral stress. Right. Because what happens is that all of the time that's meant for, looks like I lost you again, Pastor Bishop. It looked like all of the time that is meant, all of the time that's meant for you and your spouse to be enjoying each other, it ends up becoming counseling and mediation for the church.
Right.
And so your wife deserves family time exclusive. We're not talking about church. We're not talking about what Sister Johnson did. We're not talking about what Deacon Jones said.
Right.
We're not talking about, so you need a group of people that can handle that stuff. And so you don't have to dump all of it on your wife. Y'all call yourself having date night and it's really just a church meeting. Y'all done spend half the dinner talking about, what's going on at church and making church decisions over dinner at date night. That is inappropriate.
Right.
So number one, have a group of people that you can cover that stuff with, be vulnerable with. Then you have your family is your outlet.
Okay.
I enjoy my wife and my family. See, some people tolerate their family.
That's right.
You need to enjoy your family.
That's right.
Get to a place, do the work you need to do, go to therapy, go to counseling, do whatever you got to do. Spice things up in the bedroom, whatever you need to do. That's right. Take some trips, do whatever. But you need to find yourself getting to a space where you enjoy your family. If you're one of those people that still you drive home and you sit in the car for 45 minutes because you're not ready to come in the house yet, then that's an issue. That's an issue, right? You need to get to a point where you enjoy your family. You can pour yourself out. I tell you, the best part of my day is watching Wellington run around the house and play with him and get in the floor and chasing him with his trucks and and all that kind of stuff. That's my favorite part of my day. All of the business meetings, all of the church meetings,
Right.
all of the donations and money we got to raise and this and that and that and this. My best part of my day is getting in the floor with my son and watching him play and enjoying him and those kind of things. So
if you have lost that enjoyment with your spouse and family, how do you recapture that?
Yeah, I think you need to analyze. I think you need to analyze what are the barriers. The barriers typically are right in front of you. You just haven't paid attention to them yet, and so I think you have to identify what's going on, what's wrong, where's the disconnect, and you may need to, once you find those out, you may need to engage some counseling. You may need to, like I said, it's not the greatest time to travel, but a good, nice, quality vacation.
Right.
Recalibrate. Yeah, get out, change of scenery, change your environment. A very good 3 or 4 hour road trip where y'all can just talk and kind of get out of the normal rhythm and routines. You got to break up the routines, get out of the normal flow and do something different. So I would say identify the barriers. I would say attack those barriers once you realize what they are. Number 3, I would say change your routines. Implement some new routines and new rhythms that give you a change of scenery and an opportunity to switch things up, spice things up a little bit.
That's right.
And then I would say, lastly, I would say make the time count that you do have. The challenge you can have sometimes with being married to someone is that you can take them for granted. You learn, and this is important, you learn how to multitask in their presence because you live with them, because you're so used to being around them. You're used to doing something with the kids and talking to them at the same time.
Right.
You're used to taking a business call and doing something with her at the same time. You're used to, so you're used to multitasking. Well, what needs to happen, what you need to learn how to do is to give her or him undivided attention, right? You need to learn how to shut down, stop the multitasking, and it's just me and you. It's just me and you. Yeah.
So let me ask
a few things.
I love that. And Serena, if you could just summarize those 5 steps. So now, in your case, you mentioned the distinction between your peers and your friends, and then your family and your wife. Now, in your case, your wife is also your co-pastor. So then, I assume there are times when she's your administrator, she's your co-pastor. So how do you make distinction between, I'm talking to co-pastor, I'm talking to my wife?
Yeah.
How do you make that distinction? And what do you say to a pastor who wants to utilize their wife more, but maybe is hesitant, or she's hesitant? How did you even go about that process of making Pastor Ashley your co-pastor? And what does that mean to you? How does that function? And how are you allowed to strike the balance when she does have such a critical role in the ministry?
Well, I think the first thing and most important is you have to understand which role or which hat you're wearing at what time. Role clarity is so important. I don't recommend personally that that you have your spouse as your number one administrator unless you absolutely know how to switch hats.
Okay.
If you don't know how to switch hats, it is a horrible idea to have your spouse as your administrator. because you're going to organically blur lines.
Right. Okay.
And when you blur those lines, it gets frustrating for both of you. And so if you're not good at role clarity, and if you're not good at taking that pastor hat off, taking that administrator hat off, taking that taking the husband hat off, you're going to be incompetent at one of those roles. It's gonna happen, because you're gonna be giving your wife or your spouse grace that you wouldn't give a normal administrator.
Right.
Which then causes the execution to suffer, because you don't want to hold your wife accountable, because you don't want her to be mad at you when you want her to get naked later. So you don't want to hold her accountable.
Right.
Then it could be the opposite extreme. That, and this is, I can be transparent, this is what I suffered from with my wife. And she was on here, she would tell you all the story. I was way harder on my wife than I was a traditional employee or administrator. I was harder on her because she was so close to me. I held her to a different kind of standard that at times was not fair.
And I assume that even also happens with children. Yeah. So we all, even with children, we either too hard on them, hold them to a higher standard, or we're too loose and liberal with them, and they kind of do what. So let me ask this: is it that formal and structured to say, "Hey, here are our meeting times as employer employee. Here is our time." Is it really in 168 hours in a week? Is it really that structured?
Yeah, I think if you're going to have your spouse as an administrator or working with you, you have to have structure, and you have to carry out that structure the same way you would as if you were working with somebody that was hired from an Indeed ad or whatever. Because it's not fair, again, for you all to be having church meetings at 11 o'clock at night.
Your pillow talk. You talking about
that's not appropriate. Right. That's time for you all to God bless you, Natalie Bunton. God bless you. It is that's inappropriate. That's time for you all to pour into each other.
Right.
And so that's why if you have normal business hours from 9 to 4,
right,
or whatever, that's when y'all need to meet, and that's when y'all need to conduct your business. Otherwise, you're gonna have some disconnects.
I see Pastor Ashley said she fired herself a couple of times. So now,
she did.
Now, when you started pastoring, you were single. How would you say having a wife and a son has made you a better person, a better pastor?
Yeah. So let me back up just a taste, because I gave you two things in terms of how I handle the stress of all of this, right? Yeah. So I got my close inner circle, okay. I got my family, right? And then I have my hobbies, right? Okay. Whatever your hobbies are, you should have some healthy hobbies. We happen to live on a golf course. I'm hoping to take up golf, learn how to play that a little bit. Love watching movies. Things like that help me to relax, help me to kind of unwind. I have a few shows that I watch kind of religiously. I do a lot of reading. I do some reading. I watch a lot of podcasts. And I love content. I love information. I love developing and growing myself. So an ideal, perfect time for me is what I just experienced last week. We were able to go down to spend some time at a beach house. I had a couple of days to myself just to kind of pray, read, reflect, watch the water, sit on the deck and just be peaceful, eat some good food, and not have to deal with nothing to deal with the church. Don't call me about the church. Don't talk to me about the church. Don't ask me about the church. Nothing about the church, okay? Then my wife in Wellington came down a couple of days later, and then we got to just spend time together and all of that. Watch TV, eat good food, that's I'm in heaven in that kind of environment,
So she gave you your time, and then you had family time.
Absolutely. On two ends. So she gave me time. The first 2 days was to myself, and the last day was to myself.
Okay.
So we build that into, and vice versa. If she needs that, I have no issue with it. I have no issue with her taking a couple days and pampering herself and getting her pedicures and manicures and spa days and whatever she want to do. I don't care. Go ahead, help yourself, enjoy yourself. But how's my family and my wife and my son, how has it helped me to be a pastor? Well,
pastor and person.
And a person. So I'm kind of answering the same question the same way. I mean, they are my sponge, meaning I go out into the world, and if you just imagine going out and getting drenched with, life, decisions, most people don't know this, Bishop. I actually literally run 4 separate organizations, and I'm at the top of all of them. Okay. So I am, from the time I leave this house, I am making decisions, holding meetings, dealing with this, dealing with that, switching hats nonstop all day. And then everything that's been poured onto me.
Right.
When I get home, my wife and my son are my sponges. They literally, figuratively, metaphorically, they take everything that's been poured on me and they just like sponges, absorbing it off of me. And by the time I lay down on my pillow to go to sleep at night, I'm pretty much almost back to normal.
Gotcha. I love that. And I wanted to ask you that. And you're the executive director of Liberation Services. So with everything you're dealing with, as you're a full-time pastor, full-time husband, full-time father, and then you're also running a business. You're a thinker, as you mentioned, a strategist. You are an entrepreneur in the secular world, entrepreneur in the spiritual. How do you have enough brain capacity for vision, strategy in both worlds? I know for myself, I felt like I play ping pong or tennis sometimes. My head is over here, then my head is over here. You have a good Sunday, and you're feasting and basking in the glory of God. And then there's Monday where you got to shift, and you're back and forth, and you wonder sometimes if I didn't have the secular, I could really excel in the spiritual, or vice versa. You're excelling at both. How are you capable of the brain capacity to run two? They're somewhat related, but totally separate entities.
Yeah. So the simple answer is infrastructure. The second layer to that would be the team that you have, right? So there's a lot of intelligent people. There are a lot of thinkers. I always like to use this example in my training sessions. I always ask, I say, how many of you all think that Michael Jordan is the best basketball player ever? And then I asked the group, I say, well, how many of y'all think LeBron James is the best basketball player ever?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got about 60% of the room raised their hand for Jordan, 40% raised their hand for LeBron, depending on the era that what age group I'm dealing with, right?
Right.
But when they finish, I always tell them, I say, now, I appreciate all of your responses, but the truth is that neither of them are the best basketball player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The best basketball player in the world is more than likely a guy you never heard of on a playground in New York somewhere,
Right.
that you never heard of him, and you will never hear of him because although he was extremely gifted, he did not have the infrastructure or the team around him that would support him going to levels greater and greater and greater. Right. So for me, I am very, very humbled and self-aware that it does not matter how intelligent I am. It does not matter how many great ideas I have. It does not matter how much of a critical thinker I am. If I do not have an infrastructure around me that supports me being able to be a visionary, because you cannot be a visionary and be a manager at the same time.
Right, right.
And most people don't understand that. Most people try to be a visionary and want to be a manager. Mm-hmm. I loathe management. I can't stand it, because if I have to manage something, that means I probably got somebody in place that's not doing their job.
Okay.
If I'm truly going to be a true visionary, then that means I have to staff managers. I have to be able to select managers that will be able to manage different pieces of the organization that allow me, and this is important, to be good at what I'm good at.
Okay.
Okay. I don't need to be dealing with things that I'm not good at. I tell this example too, probably maybe 5-6 years ago. I had hired a graphic designer to do a flyer for an event we were having. Mm-hmm. And the graphic designer came back to me and said, okay, well, what color scheme do you want? And so I told them the color scheme. They came back and said, okay, well, what kind of feel do you want? I said, okay. I told them. Then they came back and said, well, what kind of font do you want to use? And then I gave them the font, and then they came back and they said, oh, yeah, well, what kind of size does the flyer? And I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is what you're supposed to be.
That's right.
Good at, right? I hired you because I am not a graphic designer. Right. If I was a graphic designer, then I would not have needed to hire you. So I have learned to put people around me mm-hmm. that allow me to be good at what I'm good at. Okay. The more time I have to spend designing flyers, right, the less time I have to be good at what I'm good at. If I have to go into the sanctuary and understand that the volume is too loud in the monitors, mm-hmm. then guess what? Now I got to take some of my virtue that's designed for preaching, right, and casting vision. Now I got to take that and I got to give some of it to my sound engineer.
Right.
Now, if I come in the sanctuary and I realize that it's hot in here, mm-hmm. and somebody needs to turn the AC up, well, guess what? Now I got to take some of my virtue that was meant for preaching, and now I gave some of it to the sound engineer, I gave some of it to the graphic designer, and now I got to give some of it to my facilities person. Because somebody didn't have the forethought to come in and turn the AC up because it's a hot day in the middle of July. Right? And so then if I go into the lobby and I see that it's only one person greeting and it's supposed to be two, mm-hmm. Now you see what I'm saying? So it's all these things. So you got to make sure that you have people in place This is the key thing. You got to have people in place that allow you to critically think, that allow you to be a visionary, that allow you to be good at what you're good at. And so that is some of my secret sauce, if I have any, is that I select people and then I empower them.
Okay.
This is your lane. I need you to be good at this. Now, I'm going to give you expectations. I'm going to set the expectation. I'm going to set the bar. I'm going to tell you how it's supposed to go. But after that, I don't want to have to repeat myself a whole bunch of times. I want to be around people that get it. Okay, I see the vision. I understand how my pastor thinks. I understand my pastor's mannerism. I understand his flow. Let's go. Let's move. Let's get it done.
I was going to say, I highly recommend is going across the bottom. Pastor Jay is the founder and the host of also the Church Builder Summit. And a lot of this information he has given before. I encourage you to read his books, Millennial Manual. You also have Church Leadership Moments, 21 Things All Pastors Want to Say to Their Congregations. And I finally remember Pastor Jay was posting on Facebook these different things. And I'm grateful that he memorialized them all in the book. And I encourage you, if you haven't gotten them already, get them for your teams, whether it's your church, whether it's your nonprofit organization, whether it's your business, get this information out. Pastor, I want to rewind, and our time is almost up. You are a founding pastor, and, we didn't start out with a salary. We didn't start out with, I'm sending you 25 people to get you started. I'm pay you rent for the first 2 or 3 years. And so when someone here in your church now, our churches are the same age. You started in April of 2009. We started in June 2009. And I've seen how God has blessed you and graced you and grown the ministry. So when they hear teams and infrastructure, at what point in your ministry were you able to shift to a team infrastructure model? So many churches 20 years later are still the one-man band. You've shifted to being the conductor of a symphony. How do you, when you start with nothing, people, it's not even like you got a family, you didn't have a wife and kids. So, I started, my wife and my daughter was 3 months old. How do you even develop that trust, that culture? How do you even make that pivot? Because I think when you look at some of the churches that really do grow and those who don't, it's because they're never able to make that pivot. How were you able to make that pivot and win?
Yeah. Great question, Bishop. First of all, I need to qualify the question by helping everybody understand that for about 3.5 years, my church was less than 25 people. I need to clarify that. So our very first service, we had 178 people show up to our very first service. Our second service, there was a total of 7 people there, and 4 of them was on the praise team. You understand?
I know what you're
4 of
saying.
them was on the praise team. So and it stayed about 7 people one Sunday, 10 people one Sunday on a perfect spring day in May, where one of those Sundays where everybody comes to church at the same time. We might have had 20 people and you couldn't tell us nothing. So now, how do you shift gears? How do you pivot? How do you shift the narrative? First thing you got to understand is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Okay.
Another way to say it is how you do some things is how you do everything. Bishop Younger said it this way, and it hit me like a ton of bricks a long time ago. He says, even in humble beginnings, excellence is still required.
That's right.
And so I can always tell when a church is going to stay stuck and when a church is going to break through by the way they conduct themselves and the way they approach ministry in the storefront, in the small building, when it's 10 of them, when it's 15 of them. You can always tell because it's a mindset.
That's right.
It's a mindset. It's how they function. It's how they conduct themselves, how they think about things. It's a certain level of organization. And so first is that you have to make sure that you shift your mindset
Okay.
from storefront, or shift your mindset from a small church, right? You have to change the way you think about ministry before anything will change. If you still think about it as, for example, there are churches who I've been to churches where, it's a small church, and you might see a kid, you might see a 3 or 4-year-old, on the stage, tugging at their mama's coattail, or playing with their toys on the stage while their mama's singing or something like that, right?
I'm laughing because we had that conversation at our church.
but it's these little things, Bishop. It's these little things. Listen, I was only good at teaching. I'm not I played the drums, but I'm not what you would consider a musician. I don't have the ear for singing, so I couldn't lead worship. I couldn't do nothing. I could teach, right? And so here's what I figured out is, okay, if this is going to be excellent, I got to control what I got to control, and I gotta highlight what I'm good at, and I got to get everything else out the way. So I realized very quickly that a lot of the stuff that we were trying to do that we weren't good at, we had to stop doing, and we had to highlight the things that we're good at. Because when you just start doing stuff because everybody else does it, you start engaging in a lot of things that you're not really good at. And so, and then when that happens, you have a lot of unprofessional things that happen. You start starting late. Like I said, you got little babies running around on stage. You got your flyers and stuff, or misspelled words and all kind of stuff. Your paint's chipped, your ceiling tiles are dirty. All these little things that don't cost a lot of money.
That's right.
Can be fixed when you change the mindset.
That's right.
And so for me, it changed. First of all, is I had to shift my mindset and start thinking about excellence, and realizing that excellence is not about a number of people. It doesn't mean that we got a packed house.
Right.
It just means that the way we conduct ourselves is built toward our strengths.
Okay.
And anybody that chooses to visit or chooses to come through those doors are going to get our best. They're going to be exposed to our very best. And that's what we did. And I started, the second thing I did was I stopped looking at the empty seats, and I started looking at the souls.
That's good.
I think as long as you look at empty seats, you're going to be held hostage by those empty seats. The minute I start looking at the souls,
okay,
my perspective shifted.
I like that.
Because instead of saying, okay, we got 50 chairs in here and only 7 people are here, that's 43 empty seats. Now, change that language to, I got 7 souls in front of me that I'm responsible for their eternity.
I love that.
If I don't pastor them well, their blood is on my hands. Now you got 7 people in front of you that your perspective and that one little change, your church looks completely different now.
Okay.
Right. And so when you take a look at it that way, what happens is, and what happened for me was that now, instead of focusing so much on the people that aren't coming, I'm pouring into the souls that are there.
I love that.
And when I did that, I realized they start multiplying after their own kind. The stronger they got, they went and got more people.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, because we're so numbers driven. You know, we look at the numbers, and especially now with social media and with television. You know, you were talking about earlier, how many you running, Doc? But I think as a shepherd, it's important to look at the souls and not just members. And I think that is so important. What do you see as the future of liberation, and even yourself? Do you see yourself pastoring liberation forever? Do you see multiple liberations? What do you see as the future of yourself and liberation?
Well, that's a good question. And obviously I've given it some thought. You know, I wish we were having this conversation in June of 2021, because it's some things that, you know, that I'm praying about. But the reality is that I believe that liberation is a model, right? It's a model of what I believe is on the heart and mind of God. I will say I do not have a passion or a desire to just have church. I believe that there is an intensifying need for the church to become more and more mobilized, meeting people's needs where they are, opposed to erecting this temple and screaming from the hilltops, "Come see us. We got the best temple in the neighborhood.
Right.
We got the best singing. We got the best children's, man. We got the best this. We got the best that." I think that model is becoming less and less relevant, because people in crisis don't care how good your children's ministry is. Okay. They don't care how good your praise and worship team is. What they want to know is, do you hear my cry? What they want to know is, do you see my child doesn't have any food? Do you recognize the pain in this city, or are you just interested in having church? Right. And so I think that while there is a need for the church to congregate, meet, train, develop, and deploy, I think a greater concentration of our energy over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is going to have to be not just talking about the church, but embodying and exemplifying it. Many people now are turned off by what we call church. Right. They are calling it on the carpet. They're pulling it on the carpet, and they're saying, wait a minute, this is false advertising. This is not what this is supposed to be, right? And so while, yes, I go all around the world and talk about how you need to be excellent and how you need to do this and you need to do that, you need to do that. But if you do not create a foundation of your ministry to really see and hear the people in your city, that's right, and what they're going through, and take it upon yourself to expose them to Jesus Christ tangibly, then I think this model of showing up on Sunday and who can perform the best tricks.
Right. So do you think the pandemic has accelerated that or proven the necessity of it? Something that was what we were overlooking, and now you have no choice but to recalibrate and rethink your ministry.
Let me tell you something. I don't care if you're Stephen Furtick, T.D. Jakes, or Bishop Travell Travis. In the middle of this pandemic, you all got the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
A camera and what it is that you have to say to the world.
That's right.
Okay. And, while yes, we can be creative and we can come up with all this and that stuff, but yes, the pandemic exposed that this generation cannot be maintained in godliness
mm-hmm.
through our productions on Sunday morning.
Right.
Okay, me and you and 20 other pastors, we might as well stop the competition for who can put on the best show.
Right.
Because I can put on a show this Sunday. I can bring Travis Green
mm-hmm.
to my church and I'll pack it out.
Right.
Well, you can bring Kurt Franklin next Sunday.
Right.
And everybody that was at my church, they coming to yours.
Right.
You understand? So at some point, we got to get back to the basics.
Okay.
And we got to really get back to meeting the needs of the hurting people in our communities, the widows, the imprisoned, the hungry, the naked, the homeless, etc.
And that's the part of Acts that we overlook.
Yeah.
When you read the book of Acts, we talk about the baptisms and the infilling of the Holy Ghost, but when you look at it, they talked about the widows and the homeless and the bound and the neglected. So you're absolutely right. If we want to go back to being a true apostolic church, it's more than just the preaching and the baptisms and the whole infilling of the Holy Ghost. It was a community that looked out for each other.
Yeah. And one thing that God shared with me maybe a year ago, is that kindness is a universal language. It's the language we can all understand. It doesn't matter if you what walk of life you are in, or what stage of life you're in, what economic class you're in, what demographic you're in, what race you're in, what ethnicity, whatever. If you slow down and offer kindness to your community,
mm-hmm.
everyone can understand that. And once they understand that, then they got to ask, well, who is this kindness in the name of? Mm-hmm. What name is this kindness being offered? You know why they have to ask that question? Because kindness is not common.
Right.
It's not common anymore. It's not, we're in 2 Timothy chapter 3. We're in the last days.
Right.
We're in perilous times. Men are lovers of themselves.
Everybody for themselves.
More than lovers of God.
Right.
So when we come out of ourselves and we focus on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we distill that into a message of love and kindness, mm-hmm. then guess what? When you show that kindness, a person has to ponder, mm-hmm. this is different.
Right.
I'm not used to this. You mean to tell me that you're going to do this for me and you don't want anything in return?
Absolutely.
You mean to tell me that I don't owe you anything? You mean to tell me you're not going to invite me to your church?
Right.
You mean to tell me that there's no strings attached?
Right.
Why are you doing this? I'm doing this in the name of Jesus. I'm doing this as an extension of who Jesus was in the earth. I follow his teachings. And through his teachings, I have uncovered that it is my duty and my responsibility to be a giver, because it's better to give than to receive.
I'm representing the kingdom, not my church. And that's
I'm representing the kingdom.
We're so worried about building our churches rather than building the kingdom of God. I love
Yeah.
that. Can you just quickly say your motto for your church for those who have never heard it? You've said it, but can you
Yeah.
just say it one time for everybody to hear?
It is, yes. It's to love people, to show kindness, and to serve change.
How can people get in touch with you, Pastor Jay?
They can't. I'm on sabbatical. No, I'm just
They
joking.
can follow you. Just say that way. Follow you.
Yeah. No, they can follow me on social media. I'm only on Facebook. I have a limit on my social media capacity. And so I'm not doing the Clubhouse. I'm not doing none of that other stuff. Facebook is my limit. So you can follow me on here. It's Jay Patrick. That's it. You can follow me on here.
And the nuggets he's dropping, as God gives him nuggets to drop, he goes live. And if you're following him on Facebook, when he goes live, you get the notification to watch him as he shares live, or even if you watch the replay. I'm always blessed by what God gives him. He speaks the heart and the mind of God. He also speaks on behalf of pastors. And sometimes when a pastor doesn't know how to express themselves, to his congregation, God uses Pastor Jay to really step in it and really express some things, and sometimes takes the blows, but I appreciate him going in the ring and representing pastors and articulating the heart and the mind of pastors. A lot of times, people don't understand us.
Right.
And so I appreciate, you're really helping people to understand the process of being a pastor and what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm going to end with this. And I appreciate you being on, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed you. And if you want to sow into Pastor Jay's ministry, I'll put his Cash App up. Maybe he says something to you. We believe in the sowing into good ground, and clearly you have good ground. A man that after God's own heart, who's not in it for the income but the outcome, has accepted the call of God and is doing great things for the people of God. So my closing question, I asked this last week differently. How do you want to be remembered? But I want to ask this to you a little bit different. If Pastor Jay Patrick, 30 years from now, is invited to speak at your church, how would you introduce him?
Pastor Jay Patrick is invited to my church.
The Pastor Jay Patrick of 30 years in the future is invited.
Okay.
How would you introduce him?
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. You put some thought into that question.
I gave you. I had to throw one in there just to
Yeah. So here's a fun fact about me. And Bishop, you really don't need to be in a hurry. I set this time aside for you and everything. So just know that you got me as long as any other questions, or if you want to open it up to your viewers for questions,
okay.
I'll do that. I would do that for you.
Okay.
But here's a fun fact about me. I hate introductions. So, when churches ask me to send my bio, I send it out of compliance.
Right.
But what I really want to tell them is you don't need a bio for me. I'm very good with just keeping it simple. Pastor Jay from Liberation Church, he loves God, and it is our prayer that you enjoy what the Lord lays on his heart. That's it. That's all I need. All of the other stuff, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel weird. It makes me feel. It just makes me feel weird. So so if I was introducing that Pastor Jay, and if I knew him like I know him, I would say this. I would say, everyone, I know this man of God to be one that is humble and one that is not for long introductions. So without further ado, here's Pastor Jay Patrick. Let the Lord use him real good. That's what I'd say.
I like that. I love that. I love that. Pastor Jay, he opened up the space for questions. If anybody wants to post a question in the comment, or if you just have anything you want to say, that's how my wife introduces me. They put her on the spot. She's up there now. And they said, we're going to get the first lady to come introduce him. And she said, receive Travell Travis.
That's right.
And drops the mic, go back to the seat.
Lover of one wife, what else you want,
Right. I love it. I love it. If there's no other questions, I don't know, we give space for them to come in. But Church Builder Summit, put a plug in for that. I know we just finished one, and you got one coming up in October. Tell us about it. Why the pastors owe it to themselves and to their teams to come to Church Builders.
Yeah. So Church Builder Summit is another Jacob moment for me. I was not. There's so many conferences. There's so many conferences. So many summits. There's so many, now master classes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I never wanted to be just another thing for people to have to choose whether they want to go to. But I felt a very strong conviction from God to host something different. Now, you say, okay, Pastor Jay, well, what's different about your conference? There's conference tailored to smaller churches. There are conferences tailored to mid-sized churches. There are conferences tailored to larger churches. Well, here's what God told me to do differently. Most conferences are about what I would consider to be bricks. When you consider building something, you look at the bricks, right? Bricks are preaching, praise and worship, youth ministry, hospitality. All these things are your bricks.
Right.
That's what most conferences you go to are going to deal with, the bricks. God told me to build a conference that focuses on the mortar.
Gotcha.
So it is the intangibles that Church Builders Summit is really focused on. You can build your bricks up as tall as you want, but you can knock them over very easily if you don't have any mortar.
Right.
So what I'm focused on in Church Builders is things that are intangible, like culture,
right,
like team building, like chemistry, like operational soundness,
right,
fiscal soundness. I brought you in to do legal work, right?
Right.
The legal side. There's not a lot of conferences that are dealing with the mortar, for lack of better expression. So if you're just looking for bricks, if you're looking for, what's the best marketing strategy, you got $100,000, you can put some lights and LED walls and all of that. Church Builders might not be for you. But if you are looking to come to a conference that actually will allow you to take your church from here to here,
right,
without changing your budget,
right,
Church Builders is it. Most of the things that we teach don't have a budget line item. Absolutely. It is really mindset, and it is about culture is what we're teaching.
And we've taken our church and our Echo, we took the sessions from this year and we took about a month or two of Bible studies and just applied them to us. And wherever it was said, now let's do an analysis of our church. Let's
wow.
thing. And it has been a tremendous, transparent blessing. Culture, traditions, doctrines, how we operate. It really allowed, but it was great because it wasn't just me saying it.
Right.
They heard the videos, they've seen the success stories and things. And okay, now, what does this mean for us? And what can we do now? Under the pandemic, with our numbers, with our budget, what can we do? There was a question about the pandemic. And it's interesting with churches not being able to function like normal. It seems like there is an increase in number of churches that have gotten started. I know I've been contacted from a legal standpoint. How do I start my church? And I'm like, you starting a church now? My thinking. But I understand God does what he does. And in some of the most unusual circumstances, that's when God does unusual things. So how would you advise a pastor that's called to start a church right now when most churches aren't even allowed to even gather?
Yeah. So I would advise them in the same spirit that I approach church builders, and it's the intangible things that most pastors don't have a good handle on. So I'm going to sit down with that pastor and I'm going to ask them a few very practical questions. The first question, believe it or not, that most pastors have not settled is, why are you starting a church?
Mm-hmm.
Have you concretized your why? Now, many may find that to be a very simple question, that they say, well, because we need to grow the kingdom, we need to da 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 da.
Right.
Well, you're not listening, because you haven't heard the question right yet. Why are you starting your church is really saying, what problem are you intending to solve?
Absolutely.
Because there are clearly enough churches in your city.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for you starting a new church must be founded on the principle that there's a problem existing
Absolutely.
that is not being solved by the current number of churches that are in your city. Otherwise, you just need to collaborate with the church that already exists. You need to just join forces with the church that already exists. And most pastors, believe it or not, Bishop, cannot answer that question. What problem do you intend to solve? Where are you directing the energy of all these volunteers and all these people that you are saying you want to come and join your church? Do you want them to just come so they can hear you preach? That is a flawed model. If that's your answer, it's flawed. You're not going to get very far with that. You have to have something in mind more than just, I want an audience.
Absolutely.
I want an audience. You got to have something. You got to have in order to start a church, to do that, you need to have a problem that you want to solve. I would urge you to not just plant, but I would urge you to take at least 6 months of research and development.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, you can just turn on Facebook Live and start your church. Okay.
Right.
I would advise anybody that's planning to start a church, take at least 6 months of research and development. Research your demographic. Who do you intend to reach? What problem do you intend to solve? Okay. What is your core message?
Right.
What is your core message, right? And how do you intend to get that message out? What is your ideal population? Right? Are you called to Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y? Are you called to all of them somehow? And if you're called to all of them somehow, then how do you intend to make them all feel valued and not make it feel like a millennial church?
Right.
But you got, 30% baby boomers.
Right.
Or you got, you making it feel like a baby boomer church and you got 30% millennials. How do you blend it? How do you merge it together? So I just think that a lot of people see pastoring and starting a church as something that's so easy to do, that they approach it so casually.
Right.
And I would just say that there's a lot of pre-work that most people in this position have not done. Right. And because of it, the churches really don't go very far. They don't
they got a call, they find a building, you get a sound system, get a flyer, the Facebook page, I'm ready to roll, but haven't really thought through why has God commissioned me to start another church in this city. And I appreciate that, because our church, I asked them the exact same question like 2 weeks ago. And I was reading this book, and I recommend, if somebody's here, start with why. It's from a business perspective, but you can apply it to so many areas. And that was the question, like, well, why do you need another one of us if we're doing what everybody else is doing? There has to be something that God is calling us to do that's not being done or needs more of being done in the community. Otherwise, you're just, like you said, another entertainment venue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't want to be that. We want to actually make a positive impact on our community. I don't know if there's any other questions, but Pastor Jay, I appreciate you, man of God. I appreciate your willingness and how God has blessed you and continues to elevate you and promote you, and praying God's blessings on your ministry and your life. Is there any closing words you just want, inspiration you want to leave with a pastor or a first lady? This is your space as God leads you to minister, to pray, or to close out, and that's how God speaks to you.
Sure. So first of all, I would just say to everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Thank you for just being on tonight. I would urge you, based on the last question, if you are thinking about starting a church, if you have a church, if you are looking to be a successor of a church, whatever you are looking to do, you need sound consultation. And so I'm here to also recommend Bishop Travell Travis, his legal services, his services for nonprofits, and all of that. You need to sit down with someone and give all of your flesh some skeleton. In many instances, again, these ideas, these church planning ideas, these conference ideas, all this stuff, we have all these ideas and it's just flesh. Mm-hmm. But you need a skeletal body to go in the flesh. Right. And so it's individuals like Bishop Travis that can help you with that. It's individuals like myself that can help you with that. If you have a need for that type of thing, again, I usually will I'm not doing a lot of traveling now, but I will meet with your team on a Saturday or something like that via in a digital space, because sometimes you cannot think of everything. You cannot think of everything. You cannot execute everything, and you do not have all of the tools in most cases. And so a lot of you that are listening, you are a little bit behind in your administrative layout, and you need to go back and get some legal advice. Mm-hmm. You need to go back and get some operational advice. Right. And then prayerfully your 2021 or 2022 can have a lot more wins as you plan them. Mm-hmm. You will win in the areas that you plan to win in. Right. If you are not planning, if you're not strategizing, you're going to probably repeat the same cycles until you run out of gas. So I want to see you win. I want to see you succeed. The body of Christ needs healthy churches. That's right. The body of Christ needs healthy ministries. Mm-hmm. We are in a state where the nation is more divided than ever. Mm-hmm. Poverty is going wild, running rampant. Sickness is running rampant. Man, as much as we are in a pandemic, we are in an opportune moment for the gospel to rise to the surface, mm-hmm. and for this nation and this world to be redeemed by the love of Jesus Christ. It's getting dark outside, but I believe the light is on the way. And in order for that to happen, we must be great facilitators. Absolutely. Because every church that runs into scandal, mm-hmm. every church that runs into gossip, every church that doesn't do right with the money, that hurts people, that betrays people, that lets people down, every time that happens, it is putting us further and further behind, because there's no way to separate us. Mm-hmm. We're all one church. Right. And when one of us falls, we all fall. So we got to get to the point where we're all winning. That's right. When all of us win, we all win. So that's what I'd say. I love y'all. God bless y'all.
Come on, put the emojis. let's thank Pastor J. Patrick. Show him some love in the comments. Let's post them on the screen. Thank you, man of God. Blessings to you and to your family. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thank you. Share those comments. Tell them thank you. Tell them how much you appreciate them. Show them some love. Next week, we're honored we're taking this as the Lord leads us. Next week, we're honored to have as our special guest none other than Bishop Mark A. Moore Sr., Faith Covenant Church in Atlanta, Georgia, author of Provisions for the Journey and the host of the You Can Get There From Here Visionary and Leaders Conference. We're starting off in January with Bishop Eugene McCrae, the founder and pastor of the Praise Temple, Way of the Cross Church in Anchorage, Alaska, and hear his journey growing up in Kingstree, South Carolina, through DC, and packing up his family in a vehicle, in a van, and literally driving from Washington, DC to Anchorage, Alaska, to birth a church. And so you want to hear his story of faith. You want to hear Bishop Moore. We have some great speakers that we're lining up for January. So we want to hear from you. If this is blessing you, we want to hear from you. We just took a prompting by the Lord to start Mantle Mondays. I said, I do it 1 month at a time, but we're led to go into January. And so if there's some guests perhaps you recommend, some topics you would like for us to cover, please please share, please comment, please tag, inbox somebody. Let us know if this is benefiting you, to be able to learn the minds and the stories and the testimonies and some of the best practices of some of the great entrepreneurs, pastors, authors, and leaders that the kingdom has to offer. And we close with this, and we wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And we close with our slogan, remember, it's never too early to plan for success. So once again, Merry Christmas. God bless you. Be blessed in Jesus' name.
Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2021? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church bylaws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2021. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.